Well, I can say after watching this was an hour and 40 minutes way too long.
Quiet on the set!
Welcome into the channel, or welcome back. Hey everyone, my name is Ryan. Thank you guys for clicking on this video. Today we'll be talking about the horror film called Until Dawn. If you're new to the channel, definitely hit the subscribe button, give the video a like, and comment below your thoughts on Until Dawn. Now this film, it was directed by David F. Sandberg, and I've seen a few of his films. He's done the Shazam films, he's done Lights Out, and Annabelle Creation. What is this film about? Well, 1 year after her sister Melanie mysteriously disappears, Clover and her friends head into the remote valley where she vanished in search of answers. Exploring an abandoned visitor center, they find themselves stalked by a mass killer and horrifically murdered one by one. The film stars Rubin, Michael Cimino, Odessa A'zion, Jae Young Yo, Belmont Cameli, and Peter Stormare. Now, I did see a trailer going into this film, and ultimately, I didn't think too much of it. I knew it was based on a video game. It kind of looked like Cabin in the Woods type style, and maybe some comedy, and that's really all I thought going into this film. I'll start off with the positives and say that I do like some of the visuals in this film. I think some of the horrifying type of visuals, especially with the different creatures and different ways of how they do jump scares here, I can appreciate about the film. Some of the practical effects, some of the blood work, all that kind of thing, I can really appreciate for the film, and at least from a technical standpoint, at least from visuals and the way that they kind of had like the lighting and such, I can say that I actually enjoyed those aspects of the film. Now, going into my negatives, because there is not a lot of positives like I just mentioned, I didn't really like this film. So we start off this film very strong. I will say pacing isn't a problem in this film, so I guess you could say that's another positive. But even so, there is not much character development in this film whatsoever. All these teenagers, basically you have this girl who is wanting to look for her sister who disappeared. They go to this gas station. You've seen this many a times. They go into the gas station, and this said person that's in this gas station is really creepy. And of course, you've seen that in many of horror films. And really, like 5 minutes later, we're going into this town. They get to this abandoned visitor center, and they are looking for searching of answers of where the whereabouts of Clover's sister actually is. When they get into this house, there is this timer, and you have this guest book in which they sign themselves in, and you have this time loop in which you basically have all these people just dying horrific deaths each time, and they keep going through this loop many of times, and they just die different horrific deaths throughout this entirety of this hour and 40-minute runtime. It is cool with the certain kind of deaths. I guess you can really appreciate that. But with that, though, there is kind of a convoluted story here. There's kind of a lot going on. There's a little bit of past story with the town itself. You have a little bit of past stories here with the characters and kind of why they're here. And then you also have someone that's behind all this as well. There's a little bit of story with that. And then there's also somebody else that has this story where they are trapped in this padded wall room with this psycho. That becomes an object in the movie, and basically the object here is you have all the teenagers wanting to get out of this place until dawn, but the problem is every time they actually die, they don't know how they actually died, and they don't really know what really went on, and they are losing track of how many nights they've actually been in this supposed visitor center. To me, this movie just felt as a movie that it just felt to just really drag. It had some really good visuals, like I said, and there's some certain horrific type of parts and visuals and blood and gore effects that I can really appreciate about the film. But when it really came down to a narrative, it really suffered. It has nothing to do with the games as far as I'm aware. It seems like they just pretty much made up kind of a story, slapped a logo on it, and said, yeah, this is based on the video game. So it seems from the comments that I've read that this really doesn't have much relation to the video game. There wasn't like a lot of marketing for this film too, and I feel like sometimes when there isn't a lot of marketing for films, not always, but I feel like sometimes when there's not a lot of marketing, it usually means that the studio doesn't have a lot of faith in the movie. And I feel like with this one, there's just not a lot of faith. I just feel from seeing different reviews on this movie, it seems like there's two sides. It seems like there's a lot of like 3.5s that are being given out where, it's all right type of film, and then there's others that are much lower score. And for me, this film, it's just not really a film that I can say that I really recommend if you're looking for something a little bit different. I mean, there's just a lot of things in this film that where it just really borrows from a lot of horror movies. There's like Insidious in here, Cabin in the Woods, I would say Evil Dead at points. There's some other like creatures and stuff that they borrow from other movies. So I think there's like a lot of parts in here where they're really borrowing from other movies, but at the same time, I just don't really think this movie really works. I feel like it's really messy, and I feel like we're getting into the point with movies where I feel with runtimes. So you have movies that have longer runtimes where they're like 2.5 hours, and then you get a lot of movies where I feel like nowadays like the basic runtime is like 90 minutes to 100 minutes, and I feel like sometimes within the story portion, especially with this one, it just feels like it keeps adding on more and more to kind of fill out that runtime, because again, like with this kind of movie, it's not like a big story here. I mean, it's kind of like the same thing going over and over again. And to me, after a while, I got really annoyed with it. And I think also with the fact that I did a double feature, which was 2 hours, I didn't really like that movie either. And that had pacing problems and was really messy as well. It didn't do any favors watching this film and then having to go through a film where, again, it's really messy. There's just a lot of details and a lot of other things they're trying to throw into the movie. And to me, again, it's just trying to fill out a runtime. And I think because of that, it just doesn't really work ultimately for me as a movie. And the character's not really caring for them all that much. I mean, you just want them all to die, and even so, they're dying all these gruesome deaths, but they're respawning over and over again, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, so how they're going to get out of this situation? And then each time they have like all these different kind of creatures and weird kind of horrific type of things that they have going on, and I will give them credit. I mean, there's some jump scares that got me a few times in this film, but when it really came down to really me being really entertained by this movie and really latching on to characters or really caring what was really going on in the film, I just didn't really care. I felt like there were certain things in this film where certain little plot points they would introduce, and then they just didn't really go forward with actually kind of, expanding on those type of plot points. And then there's other things that they just, kind of dropped and just didn't really care. And I just felt like, from a writing standpoint, it just wasn't all that strong. And it's a shame, because I think that this director, he's done some decent horror films like Annabelle Creation and Lights Out. I really enjoyed both those films. And for me, this one was just a slog to kind of get through at times. I just felt like I just wasn't really fully connected with the movie overall. So as far as the score for me, I would give it a 2 out of 5. I mean, it's not the worst thing I've seen this year, but it was a really long hour and 40 minutes for me, especially with the time loops going over and over and over again. If you're into that, you're going to probably really love this movie. But for me, I just can't say that I really recommend it. And again, it's pretty thin in the way that it just kind of presents its characters. And then, I mean, from a pacing standpoint, it does get into the fact that it just goes right for the gusto right away. I like that to a point, but I think you could have had a little bit more development. And again, like the story, it's just a really convoluted mess when it really comes down to it. So I can't say that I really recommend it, but I would love to hear from you guys. What did you guys think about this film? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you just think it was kind of meh? Leave any and all comments down below. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.